Greetings nerdy list aficionados and welcome back to Top 10 Nerd. Watchmen. They're doing an HBO TV series coming soon at the time of this recording. I like talking about Watchmen in general, so I want to share some facts with you because the behind the scenes minutia, the drama, there's just so much there. And well, we can live in the fact that Alan Moore hates every adaptation of his work, ever. And I'll tell you why, so stay tuned. I'm Sasha and these are the top 10 scary Watchmen facts you need to know. Let's get started. Number 10. Charlton characters. One of the things you'll often see if you dive into any form of analysis of this work is the fact that it's a deconstruction of some of the superhero mythos. The way it achieves this is by presenting highly nuanced and flawed characters. What you may see next is the comparisons to DC characters, the whole "oh, so this character is Superman and this one is Batman," etc. However, when Alan Moore first conceived of the Watchmen, he actually wanted to write it using the characters from CHARLTON comics. CHARLTON had been founded in the mid-1940s, 1945 to be exact, and was named after the co-founders' two sons, both coincidentally named Charlie. So which characters did they have? Well, they had characters like the Blue Beetle, who would now become the more obvious inspiration for Night Owl if one is applying CHARLTON rationale. The Question was meant to be Rorschach. These characters and more were only acquired in 1983. CHARLTON held on for a long time before being swallowed up. DC had initially planned to allow Moore to use these characters, but upon seeing the draft of how he intended to use them, decided against it, as they felt his work would ruin the characters for future use, so they saved them to fold into the general DC universe instead. You can definitely draw comparisons to standard DC characters with the Watchmen characters, but they're actually not direct one-to-one comparisons for this exact reason. Number 9. Padded. Now when most discuss the Watchmen, they have only good things to say about the pacing. Most, not all. So would it surprise you to know that the series is heavily padded? About 6 issues worth of padding actually. The Watchmen was a maxi series, meaning 12 issues. However, when Moore was done plotting the main story, he realized, whoops, there's only enough plot here for 6 issues. So he then went back and added more, far more to the characters' backstories and general metaphor to make sure it hit its targeted 12 issues. However, unlike other padded works, this really helped flesh out the world, and make some of the points resonate a little harder, like the whole Black Freighter parallel pirate story, which is also a send-up to EC Comics, the alternative genre comic publishing company that went bankrupt following the Great Moral Panic about comic books in the early 1950s, post-World War II. Number 8. Overtaking Marvel. Throughout DC and Marvel's history as fierce competitors, which only truly began when Atlas took on the name Marvel in 1961 alongside the creation of Fantastic Four, Marvel's first family, Marvel has tended to have a sales edge, just selling more, which has led to much general smugness, despite the fact that more sold doesn't directly translate to better product. Look how many copies of 50 Shades sold, just saying. However, when The Watchmen was released in 1986 through 1987, DC briefly overtook their rival in sales, which for them heralded just how important it would be to hold on tightly to this property, which leads us directly into number 7. Number 7. Alan Moore hates DC. For anybody who's looked up anything about Moore, this will come up quickly. His beef with the company is well known and he's not shy about talking about it. He doesn't keep quiet. And well, it's understandable. When him and artist Dave Gibbons first negotiated their deal with DC, in it was a clause that stated that once publication of the work lapsed for a year and if nothing was done with the characters, the rights would revert back to the two of them. Now Moore would later state after what happened that DC had paid the two of them quite a bit to retain the rights to the characters, but that he was still blindsided by what happened. In a truly clever, dastardly bit of loophole shenanigans, DC simply never let the book go out of print. If the work was constantly being published, the rights could never revert. Once he realized what had happened, Moore severed ties with them, which they would then use as a go-ahead to adapt the work into film, create other comic book spin-offs, merge the universes, create a TV show, all kinds of things that Moore hates. However, as always, just because he hates it doesn't mean you have to. Still pretty scuzzy DC, but all of these companies have skeletons like this in their closets. Business can get really ugly, people. Number 6. Hated the adaptation. So with all of that in place, it should be no surprise that Moore hates the adaptation, all of them, but the film was the first, so we'll deal with that one. He has actually refused to watch it, as he feels that the work he made was made to be a comic book, not to be a film. That it was a celebration of what comics as a medium could do. That comics are their own field, they don't need to be propped up by film, and that them being adapted doesn't somehow make them better or more worthy. In fact, it may mean they're not taking full advantage of the medium, because they can be so easily transcribed across mediums. So harsh. But I get it. Sometimes, especially these days, there's this idea that adaptation is the brass ring, the cookie of comicdom. Congrats, you made it, have a cookie. When what he's saying is that creating your best work should be the reward. If it gets mass distribution, who cares? Which, I mean, it's easy to say when your work did get mass distribution. At the same time though, there can be advantages to adapting works, and it can bring out new facets. Still 100% agree that one shouldn't go into one field hoping it becomes something else. That's stepping stone logic, and it can actually at times make your work worse. Number 5. Hypocrite. So the new Watchmen HBO series. The creator has beef with Alan Moore and thinks he's a hypocrite for not wanting his work adapted into other mediums. Tell us how you really feel, and he's about to. He feels that it's selfish. His rationale is that Moore wrote Batman the Killing Joke and Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, a Superman story, and those were working with pre-established characters in a new way, so why are his characters off limits? It's quote time. The idea that he came in and told iconic stories of characters that he didn't create, and has now turned around and said, you're not allowed to do that with the iconic characters that I created, I sort of feel like his own hypocrisy enables me to defile his work. So defile. Defile means to ruin or spoil something. So are you saying you're going in and deliberately trying to ruin his work, or are you just putting your own spin on it? Because those are two very different things. One may be what he perceives as spoiling, and the other is purposely trying to ruin it. I don't think any person would want their work defiled. I'm hoping he just chose the wrong word, because if not, it takes his whole sentiment, which makes sense from a death of the author standpoint that works are open to interpretation once they're out there, and it makes it really petty. Like, you told me I couldn't do this, so F you. I don't know. Defile. Yikes. Number 4. Choose your morals. One of the unique elements of Watchmen that is definitely missed in its DC Doomsday Clock comic crossover, and somewhat in other adaptations, is that it was designed to be ambiguous in its morality. Moore discusses that who he views as the 5 leads are meant to represent different philosophical approaches to looking at heroism, and that it was up to the reader to decide how they felt about what had happened. It's for this reason that Adrian isn't classed as a villain by the story, because depending upon your outlook, he isn't, and the comic allows you to feel that way and doesn't judge you for it, which in a medium that can sometimes yell at you to think this way or to feel this way about any given plot is frankly quite refreshing. Watchmen assumes a few things. It assumes you're smart and that you have the capacity for critical thought, and that allows you to exercise said thought. What a novel concept. I'm only half being sarcastic. Some works assume you're really dumb and get real condescending. Number 3. Before Watchmen. So this was a prequel comic book series released in 2012, written by a bunch of famous comic book authors and drawn by many artists. And also Alan Moore hates it. He views it as a cash grab and an insult on a work that was for all intents and purposes in his mind complete. The idea that not all questions need to be answered directly, that's what your imagination is for. However, and here's where I subscribe to the you can walk your own path, some of these are good. It's a mixed bag. I get the puritanical, no, I stand with Moore, but some of them are good and enhance the lore, and others should never be spoken of again. And these will be different for each person depending upon how you felt about each character and the original work. So yes, this exists. People don't really talk about it, but I remember, and I own all of them. Yes, commence the hazing now. Number 2. The Architects of Fear. The reveal of Adrian's plan at the end of The Watchmen is a horrifying revelation for the characters, but also for the audience, that Ozymandias was behind a lot of the things that they were investigating. So for some, this was really shocking and they hadn't seen a plot like this before. However, that was not the case for everyone. In fact, when editing the work, the editor, Len Wein, found that it bore a striking resemblance to the Outer Limits episode The Architects of Fear. In fact, he found the similarity so striking that when Moore stood by his plot, he quit as editor. So this episode aired in 1963 and is set during the Cold War as the world waits for the impending nuclear holocaust. In an attempt to stop the apocalypse, United Labs strive to create a fake alien invasion to unite the world. However, it veers off from here. The scientists have been studying life on the planet Theta and have managed to duplicate the inhabitants there, and they seek to turn one of their own, a human, into an alien threat. But it goes wrong, and well, nobody sees them, and then there's some psychic stuff and a pregnant wife. Yeah. But the core concept is there. But I don't know, there's so much more around it in Watchmen. I don't think I would have quit as editor, but that's just me. Number 1. Dr. Manhattan caused Flashpoint. So Doomsday Clock is the fusion of the DC and Watchmen universes in comic book form, which, well, I didn't need, but just like how I don't need to always agree with Moore, you don't have to always agree with me. So this event started coming out in 2017, so the end of the New 52, and it's still going due to some unbelievable art delays. So now that Moore has been released, it appears this story was supposed to have a huge impact on how exactly the New 52 came to be, absolving Barry Allen of much of the, well, drama of Flashpoint and the responsibility. Since when when Flashpoint began, it was all okay, yeah, his mom's alive, but why did that make Bruce be the one who got shot, or the Amazons and Atlanteans be at war? Some were like, well, it's just the butterfly effect. But Doomsday Clock postulates that it was Dr. Manhattan messing with the fabric of the metaverse, as he calls the DC-verse, by tweaking Superman's origin, which he has come to see as the focal point of the DC universe. However, if this turns out to be the case, at this point will that have any impact? We're in Rebirth now, the New 52 is long behind, and the long gaps in release mean that the momentum of this series has been lost. The art is beautiful, but was it worth the wait? So those were some scary Watchmen facts you needed to know. I hope you found it as fascinating as I did. I'm Sasha, and thanks so much for watching Top 10 Nerd. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and hit that bell notification so that you never miss a vid. And we'll see you again soon. Bye bye.